Hello and welcome to our webinar series organized by the Barzinji Institute for Global Virtual Learning at Shenandoah University. And this webinar series is one way for us to engage, keep in touch with our alumni of our COIL faculty training program and to also just raise awareness for this program. So we offer COIL training to faculty at our own institution, our partner institutions, and pretty much anyone else who wants to join. We do this at least once per academic year. So if this is something you're interested in, definitely get in touch with me or Younus. And my name is Alanna Tierno. I work in the Office of Global Engagement with both virtual and physical global experiences. I'm also a music history professor at Shenandoah University. And today for our webinar, we have Mira Kartiwi, and Younus, I think, is going to put her biography in the chat so you can learn more about her. She's the director for the Center for Professional Development at the International Islamic University of Malaysia, which has been a long-standing partner with the Barzinji Institute. I had the fun privilege of presenting on a panel with Mira in February in Washington, D.C. at the AIEA convention. So great to see you virtually. Mira, welcome, and feel free to get started and tell us all about AI.
Okay, thank you so much, Alanna, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning. So I know that all of us come from different parts of the world, and I'm very glad. First, of course, I would like to thank the team from Shenandoah, from Barzinji Institute for inviting me. It's really nice to again meet Alanna after, I think we met a few weeks ago in Washington, and now we met again today. So thank you so much for having me, and Younus as well. And I've heard today we have our colleagues from US as well as from Asia. So it's not so much of me giving a lecture. So I would love to actually learn from everyone. I would love to listen from everyone, and I would love to also exchange the experience of how we navigate the technology today. So initially, I was planning to give a lot of slides, but I think it will feel like a lecture, especially for those in Asia. This is very late in the evening, so I don't want to give a lecture in the evening, especially on the weekend. So I will just highlight a few bits on the slides, and then we will walk through to some of the examples that we have been done in IUM, as well as some of the activities that I've done through some engagement with a few universities in Indonesia and neighboring countries. Currently, I'm actually working in International Islamic University in Malaysia. I've been with the institutions for almost 14 years now. So nationality-wise, I'm from Indonesia. So I have quite engagement with some of the university in Indonesia. Let me just share the screen just to give okay, so the agenda for today. Okay. All right. So again, thank you everyone for joining the session today. So I was requested to actually specifically focus on the use of AI, especially on how AI can actually be meaningful tools for us to use as well as to design our COIL experience. First, because I have also extended this session to some of the colleagues in the university which they haven't experienced or they haven't actually adopted AI. So for the benefits of our colleagues who have not actually engage in AI, let me just share a little bit on why we actually in COIL, not AI, with COIL. So for the benefits for those who have not actually adopted COIL in teaching and learning, let me just give some kind of ideas on how we can actually use this in teaching and learning and how it actually benefits both our colleagues as well as our students. If you don't mind, let me just Okay, let me just turn off the bell. So hopefully the recording will be a lot clearer later on. Okay. All right. So these are the three main things that I would love to have our session started, and hopefully from this on we will have a lot more discussions and then a lot more meaningful conversations on navigating this technology, because I know currently even within the institutions that I'm currently working in, there's a lot of apprehensions, if I could say, on how this technology is actually can be used in education. So a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformation and misinformation is also available in the public. So that kind of shape how our colleagues, especially faculty members who are new to technology, perceive this technology. So let me start with the first one, COIL first. So why COIL? For those who are new to COIL, let me give two perspective on how this actually be meaningful for both students and instructors. So from the students' perspective, I think we have been talking a lot, and in fact, in the past decades, we have been talking about global employability. One of the things for us to be equip our with traits, adapt the will, of course, on active as on the cultural when we are, although many students in IU is actually have quite a number of students coming from overseas, which is international students, but still if we don't actually design the kind of activities or the kind of meaningful interactions between our students even in the class, those things which supposed to be value add to the class, it will not be that meaningful. So it has to be sort of engineered to actually so that the students can actually feel the experience of having people from different cultures, from having different perspective, and then feels a different experience. Even more if we have COIL, where for those who actually the internationals who come to Malaysia, for example, only the international students can actually feel what are the kind of perspective that they would be able to learn living in Malaysia. But for Malaysian students, they will not be able to experience that unless they travel overseas, or they go for they actually going overseas for for international exchange, for example. But the problem is not all students have that privilege to travel overseas. So in this case with the COIL, we're actually giving that experience for the students to actually see and learn how people from different cultures, from different parts of the world actually learn and actually live, actually communicate, because they can see that these people, as what is interesting is that some of the students share the daily life of what are the things that they do when from starting from waking up and all those kind of things. So this gives a totally a different experience. So when we have this kind of COIL, when we have this kind of initiative, obviously this will not only give a value add for the students, put the learning experience in perspective, and also give that reference in life that yes, I have interacted with people actually live in different parts of the world, although I'm not traveling, but I can see what they are doing. I can feel what they are experiencing. I can at least learn to communicate at, for example, on something that is non-academic. So some of our students actually exchanging opinion about food and whatnot. So this is one of the things that we can leverage from COIL. Not to mention about the accessibility to international education, and we have been assuming a lot when it comes to how certain field is actually taught in different parts of the world. To our surprise, actually from COIL, we can see that a lot of approach is actually kind of similar between the West and the East. So in this case, we've learned on how much the world have actually progressed and expand. So we will not be able to see this without COIL. And the enhancement of digital literacy. Of course, with COIL, one of the things that we would want to equip our students is the ability of navigating all this technology, able to communicate using the technology, using all this web conferencing. COVID really accelerate this digital literacy by far, and also how our students communicate using the tools have enhanced at a very fast speed. But the problem is we haven't really put the meanings sufficiently to all this process. So in this case with COIL, we kind of like guide them and help them to put context and meanings to all these interactions with the use of technology. And with the COIL, we have experience actually interacting with students from different field so it's most of the COIL that we have done with Senandua University is actually interdisciplinary. So I have collaborated with faculty members from math faculties. For example, I'm actually from ICT. I'm from IT faculties, sorry, IT school, and I have collaborated with people from math department, which is science departments. Currently, I'm very honored to actually collaborating with Prof. Laura Zimmerman, which is from psychology department. So with this experience, it will be hard if honestly, it's hard to actually start this kind of interdisciplinary if I have to do it within IUM alone. Sometimes it takes a lot of barrier communication to actually have interdisciplinary, but with COIL, it's possible. So it's possible to actually have this kind of interactions. And I learned a lot from all these interactions, interdisciplinary collaborations with faculty members from different university. And the last one, what is something that is interesting, the experience of the instructors, for those who actually have been involved a lot. Okay, for those who actually have been involved a lot in COIL, I think later on maybe Younus, feel free to share some of the previous programs that we've done and how the instructors actually able to bring the experience that they've learned from COIL into the class, which non-COIL class. So it actually helps the COIL experience, the fact that we are learning from faculty members from different institutions. We actually learn a lot and get a lot of ideas on how we can also improve the class, which not part of the COIL project. So this is actually, it allows us to have a lot of innovative teaching practices to be implemented in the classes, which is not part of the COIL project. So this alone, it offers a lot of benefits on COIL. But now let's bring AI in. So if the recent publications from World Economic Forum, I think this again reiterate the promising benefits that AI, generative AI, can actually bring to education. The problem is, again, as I said earlier, I'm from professional development, which is a unit, which is it's part of my portfolio to actually ensure that people can bring in technology and take meanings out of it and integrate this to teaching and learning. But again, one of the big hurdles, one of the big challenges that we experience in the institutions is making sure that people, at least if they have a lot of apprehensions, they would try to see what kind of benefits, if it's not for assessment or if it's not for something that is people still have a lot of apprehensions on, but at least try to see on how AI can actually improve certain things when it is related to building and teaching materials, for example, and try to see some benefits from it, which is, it may take a while to actually change the whole perspective, but at least try to find meanings out of it. So we have introduced a lot of trainings from basic level. So let's have a look on how we provide a teaching, or how we construct a teaching plan. Let's use AI to construct a teaching. So something like a very 101 kind of introductions to AI to teaching and learning. And it's amazingly when people can see the benefits for themselves, then only they would be able to, okay, so let's have a look on how we can actually introduce the tools for class discussions, how we actually can use the tools on critical thinking. How do we, so all these kind of things started with a little bit shift of paradigm. So it's not a major shift of paradigm, but we introduced with one small discussions at a time. And I'm glad to say now more than 500 out of 1,900 faculty members that we have on campus have been trained on at least the use of AI in the classroom. And not to mention, we do have a lot of guide from UNESCO. UNESCO have done a lot when it comes to promoting and making sure that the meaningful adoptions of AI in education is well taken care of. So they have produced a guidance for generative AI in education. They've also produced on the ethics and whatnot. So I would like to promote the or refer to all these references for us to actually, especially as policymaker, to actually start to see on how we can use this kind of references in our in promoting, especially in policy, in making sure that the policy is actually fit and promote the use of this technology in the classroom. If I can, if I can just give an example, we have been assuming a lot, especially when it comes to education, young generation, Gen Z with generative AI. So one of the experiments that I did in my class is ask the students to come up with the prompt to create an image, because there's a lot of things that we can actually do with AI, right? For example, AI can actually help us for translation. AI can actually help us to construct an essay. AI can actually help us to come up with content, with videos, with music, with image like what you have here on the screen. But what is interesting is that there's also limitations when it comes to AI. There's an issues of biasness. There's an issues of the limitations of references, which of course, when ChatGPT also disclosed that they don't have the recent information. So if you are looking for an event as of today, it is not part of the references that they can actually refer to. So the students should be aware of those kind of limitations that generative AI has. And not to mention, one of the triggers to biasness is because of the references that actually currently scanned by the algorithm. A lot of them is actually comes from majority of references which is available at public domain, which is of course in English. So the references, for example, if I'm asking something about say I'm asking about the leaders of my hometown, so the governors, for example, in one of the province in my country, when I first asked that questions in English, I could and in Google, for example, I could get a much more accurate answer. But when I try to put the same questions in generative AI, it gives me a totally different answer, because of course there's not many references that the algorithm can actually extract about the particular governors. Because most of the information is actually given in Bahasa Indonesia. So unless I ask the questions in Bahasa Indonesia, probably I would get a much more accurate answer. So when I ask the students to actually construct the prompt, to my surprise, a lot of students actually are not used to with constructing questions or structures of questions that would give or would trigger a meaningful response from the generative AI. So for example, here, if I ask the students to construct a prompt so that we can come up with environment, what is, if I have to describe, for example, if you have to describe what is Islamic University is all about. So what the students, most of the students usually ask the generative AI is by providing such form. So create an image, teacher and students in computer laboratory about AI, learning about AI. The classroom is in Islamic University. So, but if you have a look in here, this is one of the things that, and this is where we can actually use AI for a much deeper conversation. So because from here, apparently from the pictures, AI is a very the perceptions of AI about Islamic University is the teachers is wearing the, I'm not sure how do you term it, it's the hats for the male, and then a beard, which is this is totally what real it's a very stereotype, which is not really what portrays Islamic University. If you come to Malaysia, it's not something like what it portrays here. So I asked them to how about if you come up with different prompts? So and I tested with this. How about if we have all women must wear headscarf? So in this case, so yes, now the woman is wearing headscarf, but as you can see in here, there's also limitations from AI. It doesn't construct the image properly. So as you can see in here, the hand is actually in the keyboard, but the other hands we cannot really see where. So this is the limitations of AI. So when we have this generative AI, output of generative AI in front of their eyes, and we bring this kind of conversations and much more deeper conversations, like what do you think when we have this kind of images portrays certain identity? So we can actually test this, or if we during COIL. So for example, students from different country let's just ask them to portray something that represent the culture, and what generative AI is actually perceive of the culture. Will it be something that is actually resonates to the actual scenarios as what the generative AI portrays? So these kind of things is a lot more meaningful. It has a lot more impact, and it has a lot more room for us to see how we guide the conversations to fulfill our learning objective, which is make them much more aware of what differences that we have, but on the same time we celebrate these differences, because now we know that there are so much things for us to learn, and these differences actually makes a lot more it adds a lot more color to our life and how we interact, because there's strength and from each culture that we can actually contribute as part of working together in be that in later on in the workforce, or even in the learning environment, how one cultures can actually bring values to how we see different things in perspective. So this is one of the things that we've done. And again, another things that we currently do with I currently implemented with Dr. Laura. So since that Dr. Laura is here, so later on I would really love to learn from Laura as well on her experience. But what we conducted is that we asked the students to actually use generative AI to just ask any prompt in any generative AI and introduce something about the culture. I will pick one of the videos later on, my students' video, and we don't actually put themes on what are the things that they should ask. We allow them to ask anything about their culture, but they have to introduce their own culture to the colleagues. So they can use any generative AI, learn what they can learn about the culture and introduce that to the colleague. So this is, again, when I ask some of my students in my class, so what do you experience? They said, I thought it's going to be easy because it sounds like we can ask anything. But then when I started to see the what generative AI say about my culture, I just realized there's so many things that I didn't know. So it's a lot of things that we didn't realize. We thought that the students are so well-versed, the Gen Z are so well-versed with technology, but they haven't been guided enough to see the meanings, the values of it. So when we guide them through teaching and learning, we try to instill values on the same times on the technical parts of this technology. And there's a lot more, and I would be more than happy to show bit and pieces later on in our discussions. But I really hope this is perhaps one of the things that we can start to see how AI can actually be used in COIL. Especially now, I'm very sure everyone is aware that there's a lot of generative AI that can be used easily to, like as of when I'm speaking like this at the moment, I can have generative AI to automatically generate translations of my presentation in English. And the same thing, if I presented in Bahasa Indonesia, for example, I can have translation automatically live in English. So translation is one of the benefits of AI. But with this translation, sometimes there's a lot of things that things that missing in translation is the taste of the language. So it may not be as accurate if I presented my presentations in English and if I read the actual translations that comes from AI, it may not have that same flavor. So, but at least it helps. It helps. So that gives some benefits. But later on, through discussions, we can actually ask the students to discuss, does the translations that actually come from from generative AI, does it really reflect what you really want to say? So the students can have another, again, conversations on the values of generative AI in translation, the values of generative AI, again, for example, in image, the music. So there's a lot of things. So I'm honestly, I'm kind of a person that subscribed to a much more hopeful values of this technology, not because I'm from ICT, but it's because of I can feel I have bring this technology to the class and I can see the values that it actually brings to the discussion. So not so much of the mechanical part, but the discussions, the debate and all those kind of things really more colorful when we have all these tools in. And I really hope this would also be meaningful for your COIL. So maybe if I could start from that, Alanna, I don't want to be too prescriptive, so maybe we could have a lot more engagement later on through the question and answer.
Yeah, sure. It's up to you. Yeah, thank you, Mira. So we have plenty of time as Mira designed this for questions or thoughts. So feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat. You can also raise your hand and unmute yourself. Well, I'll ask a question to get us started.
Sure.
Oh yeah, just a really basic one. So, I mean, for those of us who are professors, we're talking about two different things here that kind of challenge us, that it's out of maybe our usual comfort zone pedagogically. So COIL is something that we have to get used to. AI is something we have to get used to. And just looking at AI, like what advice would you have for professors who might be a little bit intimidated by it? Because I know some of my colleagues are redesigning their assignments to make them less susceptible for a student to like write an essay using AI. So what advice do you have for maybe not people who are skeptical, but people who are just a little intimidated by incorporating it in their classrooms, COIL or no COIL?
Okay. I think a lot of apprehensions that I received from many of my colleagues recently is on the perceptions that the students will always or more likely to use AI to cheat, be that to write an essay or produce, especially in my field in IT. I've heard that a lot of faculty members concerned that the students actually use generative AI to produce the code. So then I asked the same questions to the students, like, how many of you actually use AI? Because for us who have been teaching the domain, we would be able to see something that is produced by machine and something that is produced by human. And to my surprise, first, not many students actually using it, and I can see that directly on the product of learning that they submitted, this assignment, the assessment that they submitted. Majority are not actually using it because they understand the values of learning. I think majority of our students understand the values of learning, but I do have some cases in which the students actually use generative AI. And when I approach the person, why do you use this? And most of the concern is because of they were not able to grasp the concept, so they thought it's a shortcut. They can just produce the code, but they didn't know that we can actually investigate further by asking, okay, so, okay, say this is yours. If I remove one of the line, for example, I'm teaching coding. So if I remove this line, what would happen to the script? And of course, we would know. They will not be able to answer that because they thought that what we are looking for is just the product of learning, not the learning process. So I think if for those who are very currently are new to technology and very skeptical with the technology, again, we have to see what is learning actually in the first place. We should not see learning only from the product, but we also should see learning from the process. Most of our students currently understand that learning is actually from the process, but we do have very minimal number of students who only see learning as a product, learning as the output of learning is just about the grades. But that's again, those are very small number of students, and we have to guide them. We have to help them to realign, to understand again what's the meaning of learning and demonstrate. If you really get this, say yes, you have submitted the assessment and it looks good. The essay looks good, but what happened if I change the questions a little bit? What would be your thoughts if I change a little bit? And then we would be able to see whether the reasoning, the thinking process is actually in place, or it's just that, again, what they want is just the product. What they care is about the product of learning. And that's easily for us who have been teaching for many years, we will be able to detect that easily. It's just that it takes an extra effort for us to follow up, to investigate. And again, if you have set this since the beginning, in my case, I have actually set the rules since the beginning, since day one of the class. I have one, maybe I'm not sure whether, perhaps I can share with everyone here. This is my rules in sort of AI rules in my class. Okay, so let me just share. So this is for first year course. And this is programming course, database programming. Let me, okay, so it's loading very slow, sorry. Okay, so I designed this at the last page of my introductions to the course. I'm not sure why it's very slow. Please bear with me. So I have this one page on the left-hand side soon. If it's loaded properly, it will show. I do have rules when it comes to AI. So specifically on AI, I encourage them, and I have some activities I will show again later on, some activities in my class. So this is the generative AI policy in my class. So I allowed use, students are permitted to use generative AI tools for exploring concept, and I demonstrate to them you can use generative AI for exploring concept, generating ideas for project. Why not? Assisting with code generation. That's the tools. Why can't we use it? But then again, I teach them that you have to acknowledge whatever resources that you have to use, and you have to acknowledge. That's the beauty of learning, that we know we acknowledge the resources. So the use of such tool is clearly cited in the work, and the students should understand and explain the generative content, the generated content or the code. So not just copy and paste, but they have to be able to understand. And it is not allowed to submit the work as is. So just now, for those students who actually just copy and paste and then just focus on product of learning, we guide them again. We remind them again. Submitting the work that is generated by AI without understanding modifications or proper citations is prohibited. And this includes using AI to complete the homework, projects, or exam without significant personal contributions and learning. But so students may not be able to see what this is all about. So when I introduce the activities, let me just share with everyone here. I have one activities in my class in first week. Okay.
And Mira, while you're talking about your classes and your syllabus, there was a question that came in about how to assess assignments that integrate AI. So how do you grade them differently, or how do you go about assessment?
Okay. How do I grade assessment that use AI, is it?
Yes.
Okay. The assessment that I use, for example, this one, I think that's exactly spot on. So I have this one activities, which is it's graded. I have a pre-class activities, a learning enforcement of the previous class, but also to facilitate learning for the upcoming topics. So I have this one activities in which I ask the students to actually use generative AI. They can choose again any tools that they are comfortable with. So I'm not promoting any of the Gen AI per se, but I ask them to explore this concept. So how do I grade? I grade from how do they first, of course, what they learn from the results. So I don't really encourage copy and paste, but read and then just write it down what you have understood from all what you have read. So some students are able to do that. And then in the class, I introduce a lot more engaging conversation. So then I will be able to validate the kind of understanding that they've got from here. So I would change the rubric. I change the rubric of how I look at the product of learning. So not only from the product per se, but also from the reflections, from the actual engagement. So then from there, the emphasis is on again on the understanding, and it's very meaningful because most of the students felt all this while what they have been assessed is on memorizations, which is not right. Memorizations can only last up until exam probably, but after that most of our students would probably forget what are the things that they have learned. But if this is the learning process, it's amazing on how it actually impacts on how they see the subject in the first place. So all this while when we are talking about this term, for example, they thought that they will only be assessed on definitions, but no, I'm not talking about the definition anymore, because definitions you can easily use your mobile and get the definitions right away from generative AI. But what can you understand? How it actually relates to you as a student? So when we have these kind of things, the deeper, the more meaningful kind of engagement they have, then they would give a better reflections, a better grade or score in the rubrics, and they know that rubrics is actually exists for them to refer as well. So I think I have shifted the assessment from content based to understand to reflections based to looking at different perspective, which is not only on just on the content. So the most of my assessment now is using a rubric based. So I'm not sure whether that's actually answer your questions, but feel free to unmute if you want to explore more. But
and then there was another question that came. Oh, you're gonna say anything? Oh, okay. So there was another question that came in about like what disciplines or subject areas would be more amenable to AI. And I would say like, I mean, any discipline. Like I teach music history and we deal with AI. We can create assignments that utilize AI. It is not just for STEM, like humanities, performing arts. And same goes with COIL collaborations. You can have a COIL partner with your exact same discipline. I had a COIL partner who was a veterinary science professor. So we combined popular music and veterinary science. So you can be as interdisciplinary as you would like with both COIL and AI. And Mira, a couple of questions. I think like people were looking for more practical examples. So somebody was looking for specific platforms that you might recommend for using AI in the classroom, particularly with linguistics, language translation. And then if you had any examples, either for yourself or your colleagues, of the use of AI with a COIL project. So
Okay.
like,
Yeah. So first, I would like to introduce this. So one of the approach that I promote to my colleagues is also on the explore activity. So one of the things that we would want to see from the students, what the students actually we want to see the process, right? So in this case, what is the class concept? And then so I asked, what is the class concept that they're actually trying to explore? What is the prompt? And this is we thought that students understand how to construct a prompt. Constructing a questions is an art by itself. It's a skill by itself. It's something that is, for me, I'm fascinated enough by how much we have been assuming on how the skills that the student have when it comes to prompting a questions, asking a questions, because majority of my students would probably define or what is, or but they don't go into which is a very surface learning. Only maybe if I can say statistically 20% the students were able to use with a much more deeper prompt that really helps them to understand the concept better. So clearly our students really need a lot of guidance in even prompting the questions. So this is one of the sample activities. I would encourage to actually ask them to put the prompt in the report if you asking for the report, and also the answer from generative AI and the interpretations of the result of generative AI. So in here in this particular block, I ask them to copy paste and what they interpret from the result. So this give a totally different perspective when we read this. Unfortunately, I will not be able to show any of my students' submissions, but I would be more than happy if later on we could have a different, maybe if anyone would like to reach out to me in person, I would probably give some examples on the kind of answers that some of my students actually submitted. Let me share the activities again on COIL. Since that Prof. Zimmerman, Dr. Laura is also here. Laura, if you feel like you want to share yours, is also, I would really encourage to do that. But let me just share with what I have from my students. So this is the activities that we have. Let me just share. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Laura, I hope you don't mind if I share this. Is it okay, Laura?
Yes, that's fine.
The website that we have for our COIL. Yeah, so this is the website that we have for our current project with Laura. So I'm truly honored. I feel so grateful that I have Prof. Zimmerman to be part of my COIL project this semester. So we do have this website in which we introduce our activities to the student. And one of the things that we do to start the conversations going is we ask the student on how they can actually use, so we ask them to use AI. So this is the activity. We ask the students to explore the insights or to ask questions to generative AI, explore anything related to the culture, anything. We don't give any themes, anything. And provide with 1 minute video, and of course, we guide them with some of the rules on making sure that they have to be respectful and whatnot. So all these kind of things, very trivial, but the insights that I get from here is amazing. Let me just share. I'm not sure whether I can share any of this, but let me share mine. Maybe just to be fair, let me just share mine. So does the sound comes in?
No.
no, we're not hearing anything.
me see whether I can. I will share the link probably. So that's okay. I will share the link so everyone can actually check the videos. Some of the videos that we are allowed to share in this forum. So I will just share mine and one of the students that I have get approval on the use of generative AI on the culture. Okay. So, but perhaps Laura, if you want to add anything, what's your experience so far?
With generative AI, and it's interesting. I never thought of doing introductory videos doing this way, and it was really interesting to see what my students chose in terms of the topic, and then also how they talked about it. Was really interesting, and not something I think I would have gotten with another type of system. So I have to say it was very interesting. I'm going to have to use that idea again in the future. I can also tell you that's my generative AI class. It's my research methods. I'm actually having generative AI review their papers. So they're writing APA, so they're the American Psychological Association. And so they're actually doing prompts asking AI to evaluate their clarity and organization. And it has been very interesting. And pretty much in all cases, it gets good feedback. It gives bad feedback, but it's given my students something to reflect on. And honestly, with their peer reviews, they also get good feedback and bad feedback because they're still learning. So yeah, it's really interesting how it can be used in a good way. So I've really enjoyed looking at it in these different ways and how it can be used.
Any tips, Mira or Laura, since we have you, for making AI and COIL a meaningful experience for students? Like, is there any advice that you have for using AI to enhance COIL and make it even higher impact than it already is?
I'm going to leave this one with you, Mira, because you're the expert in this area. She's teaching me how we can use it in that way. And by the way, on that beautiful website, totally Mira. It's wonderful.
Oh, no, but I'm very, very grateful, Laura, to have this experience, and my students are excited to see the product of learning as well. So, but back to your questions, Alanna. So, how do we enhance the AI for the
How can AI make COIL even more meaningful for students than it already is?
So one of the activities that I mentioned just now, for example, most of our students are familiar with Canva, for example. Sorry if I have to mention a certain product. Canva, for example, most of our students are familiar with using Canva, and Canva has that AI visual generative, the generative visual element. So they can actually put prompt and pictures will be generated. And this is one of the things, another activities that I use in the class is that when a picture is generated, what do you perceive of the pictures? Does it really reflect what, for example, if you want to introduce a culture using visual element, using a poster, for example, and the pictures is generated by AI, does it really reflect your culture? Does it really reflect your the elements that you want to introduce? So it's interesting to see that some yes, some don't. And how do we produce a better prompt? Is it because of our prompt was not? Is it because of we don't actually put a proper prompt, or is it something that the biasness of the algorithm that we still have to improve? And all this is actually machine learning. This machine is still learning, so we have to teach again the machine on how to produce a better output. So bring this kind of, I really encourage to bring this kind of activities because students these days they need a lot of guidance in making meanings out of all this technology. They are mechanical wise, they're good, but meaningful wise, they need a lot of guidance from us, and it requires a lot of again the demonstrations of how to use this in the right perspective. But it's not difficult. It's just that we need an extra effort just not to produce to select platform, for example. So visuals would be Canva would be one of the example, but content-wise, I think we do have a lot of platforms. Laura introduced me to cloud, and then in Asia, in my institution, I think the three most common is Gemini, ChatGPT, and Copilot. So when I bring in, okay, so Prof. Laura introduced another one now. So try. What do you see from here? So this is one of the things that we can expose to the students. And so far I found, because the class, the one that we are currently collaborating, my class is actually an executive program. So most of my students are actually working adults. So they were having kind of interesting experience to see all those introductions videos from the students in Shenandoah University, which is much more younger than them. So it's very nice.
Thank you. So we're almost at the hour. I know our Asian colleagues probably want to go to bed soon. If I think we might have time for maybe one more quick question. In the meantime, I am going to put my email, Younus's email, and Mira's email in the chat if you haven't already collected them and want to email any of us about any of the things that we talked about today.
Yep.
All right,
I will share
thank you
some
so
of
much
the...
for an engaging webinar. I hope this was a good learning experience for all. And again, just please be in touch with us if you want to talk about anything COIL, AI. Thank you so much for signing up and attending, everyone. It was great chatting with you. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll see you. Stay tuned for our next webinar. It'll be on LinkedIn, advertised on all the spaces, and hope everybody has a good weekend.